Hey, welcome back. I have to tell you, I was walking through the American Museum of Natural History here in New York last weekend, and I stopped in front of this beautiful fresco. It showed these elegant, athletic figures leaping over a bull. The colors were still vibrant, the motion frozen for thousands of years. And the label simply said, Minoan, Crete, circa 1500 BCE. And it hit me. We know the art, we've heard the myth of the Minotaur and the labyrinth, but we have no idea what these people actually called themselves. Their entire world, a sophisticated maritime empire, just vanished from history, leaving behind whispers and questions. What happened to them? I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations. Today, we're unraveling one of history's most elegant and enduring mysteries in episode 15, the silent collapse of the Minoans. Volcano, invasion, or peace? Picture this. It's the Bronze Age, around 2000 BCE. While others are building fortifications and fighting land wars, on the island of Crete, a unique civilization blossoms. The Minoans, as we call them after the legendary King Minos, build vast, sprawling palace complexes at Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea. But here's the first clue to their character. These aren't castles. They have no massive defensive walls. They're open, multi-storied, with intricate plumbing, light wells, vibrant art everywhere, and those famous storage magazines for olive oil and wine. This was a thalassocracy, a sea empire. Their power and wealth flowed from trade, from their magnificent ships crisscrossing the Mediterranean, dealing in saffron, pottery, and ideas. They seemed confident, peaceful, and deeply connected to the sea and the earth. Then, around the middle of the second millennium BCE, something shifts. The archaeological record shows damage, disruption. And by 1100 BCE, they're gone, absorbed, forgotten. Their script, linear A, remains undeciphered. So their own voice is silent. We're left with three main suspects, three theories that historians and archaeologists have been debating for over a century. The first theory is the most dramatic. It's the natural disaster of all natural disasters. Just 70 miles north of Crete is Thera, the island we call Santorini. Around 1600 BCE, it wasn't a picturesque crescent, it was a massive volcano. And it exploded with a force estimated to be many times greater than Krakatoa. The eruption would have been apocalyptic. First, earthquakes rocking Crete for days or weeks. Then, a towering column of ash visible across the region. Then, the tsunamis. Waves, perhaps over 100 feet high, crashing onto the northern coasts of Crete, sweeping away ports, fleets, and coastal settlements. The ash fall would have blanketed the island, smothering crops, poisoning water, bringing agriculture to a halt for years. In one cataclysmic event, the very foundations of Minoan life, their navy, their trade, their food supply, could have been shattered. It's a compelling, almost cinematic end. But here's the puzzle. The eruption happened around 1600, but the final collapse of the palaces and the end of distinct Minoan culture seems to have taken another couple of hundred years. So did the volcano deliver a knockout blow, or just a staggering punch that left them reeling? Which brings us to our second suspect, invasion. Enter the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece. We know them from the legends of Agamemnon and the Trojan War. They were a warrior culture, building fortified citadels like Mycenae and Pylos. In the archaeological layers right after the period of disruption, we start to find something new on Crete. Mycenaean-style weapons, their script, linear B, which we can read, and it's an early form of Greek, and even their burial practices. The palaces that were rebuilt, like Knossos, show a different, more militaristic character. The art changes. It's less fluid nature scenes and more scenes of warfare. The traditional story has been one of conquest. That the weakened Minoans, perhaps after the volcano, were no match for the aggressive, expansionist Mycenaeans, who sailed in and took over. It fits a classic historical pattern. The graceful, trading civilization overwhelmed by the harder, martial power from the periphery. But is it that simple? Because there's a third, more subtle theory gaining ground. Maybe it wasn't a violent invasion, but a slow, cultural takeover. A peaceful collapse. Think about it. The Minoans and Mycenaeans weren't strangers. They were trading partners for centuries. The Mycenaean elite likely admired Minoan culture, their art, their sophistication. After a disaster like Thera, Crete would have been vulnerable. Mycenaean merchants, mercenaries, and maybe even political factions could have flowed into the power vacuum. Through intermarriage, economic dominance, and political maneuvering, their culture and language could have simply become the new standard. The Minoan identity didn't die in a battle. It faded, assimilated, like a dialect disappearing into a more dominant language. The palaces weren't sacked. They were just repurposed by a new administration. This theory suggests the collapse was less about fire and sword, and more about a silent, generational shift in power and identity. So which is it? As an engineer, I'm always looking for the root cause, the single point of failure. But history, especially ancient history, rarely works like that. The truth likely lies in a cascade. The Thera eruption was a profound shock to the system. It didn't destroy Crete outright, but it crippled its economic and symbolic power. It showed the Mycenaeans, and perhaps the Minoans themselves, that the old order was fragile. In that atmosphere of crisis, the existing connections with the mainland intensified. What might have started as aid or increased trade could have evolved, over generations, into control. The Volcano set the stage, and the cultural and political dynamics with the Mycenaeans wrote the final act. This story resonates with me on a personal level. Coming from Bangladesh, a land of rivers and resilience, I think about how civilizations endure not just through stone, but through adaptation. The Minoans, for all their brilliance, may have been a victim of their own success. Their open, non-fortified world was perfect for an age of peaceful trade. But when the climate, both geological and political, changed, that same openness became a vulnerability. They didn't build walls, and eventually, the world outside came in. The legacy of the Minoans isn't in a continuous line of kings or a conquered territory. It's in the foundation they laid for classical Greece. Their artistic motifs, their maritime knowledge, even the legends they inspired, were absorbed by the Mycenaeans and through them, passed down. They are the silent, elegant precursors in the story of the West. So, the next time you see that image of the bull leaper, remember, you're looking at a moment from a lost world. A civilization that chose beauty over battlements, trade over territory, and in the end, left a mystery that reminds us how fragile even the most brilliant empires can be. Their collapse was likely not a single event, but a whisper that faded over centuries, until all that was left was the labyrinth of history, waiting for us to find the thread. If you're enjoying this journey through the echoes of fallen empires, make sure you're following the show. Share it with a friend who loves a good mystery. For the full archive of episodes, visit our production home at Light Not Studios. https://www.lightnotstudios.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep building.